Hello everyone, welcome to the class. Beta, in previous lecture we completed the chapter 1 of civics. What is democracy? Why democracy, right? Today we will start with history, chapter 1. Name of the chapter is the French Revolution. Beta, this revolution is about the France. As you know, do you aware about any revolution? Just think. Beta, in class 8 we read about the freedom struggle of India, right? And we read about the revolt of 1857 also. So what do we mean by the revolution? Revolution means when most majority of the people they revolt against the government. It is called revolution. The same thing happened in France. But there is one more thing, that there is not any one cause behind the revolution. It is a chain of events, right? Like we read about revolt of 1857, there were economic causes also, there were social causes also, there were religious causes also, military causes also. So in here in French Revolution also there are chain of events, and afterward there is a immediate cause of the outbreak of revolution also. And in this, do you know what happened? There was one very famous fort and its name was Bastille. On 14 July 1789, people formed their militia and they attacked on this fortress prison. Because this prison, this fortress was hated by all just because of despotic power of the king, means autocratic power of the king. So this was the outbreak of the revolution, and there was a chain of events, means there were some social causes also. The French society, it was divided in three estates. First estate, second and third. First and second estate, they were noble and clergy, and third estate, there were the merchants, businessmen and peasants. And do you know, all the financial burden was on the third estate. So this was the disequality in the French society. This was also the cause over there. And then subsistence crisis. Subsistence crisis means when there is a lack of basic means of livelihood, then it is called subsistence crisis. So there are so many other events also that we will discuss now. So let us start the topic. This is the introduction of the chapter. On 14 July 1789, Paris was in state of alarm. People agitated and formed militia. Militia is when the citizen formed their army to attack somewhere, then it is called militia. And they destroyed the fortress prison, the Bastille. Bastille was hated by all because of despotic power of the king. Now, what were the reasons behind this hate? There was discrimination among the three estates, like I told you. Then subsistence crisis. There was so much lack of the basic needs. Then people were dying of hunger, but there was extravagance on immense palace of Versailles. So these all were the reason behind this revolution. And you know, first of all, now we will study the French society during the late 18th century. In 1774, Louis XVI of Bourbon family ascended the throne and married Austrian princess. And when he ascended the throne, he found an empty treasure. Why this treasure was empty? Because long years of war drained finance and cost of maintaining court at Palace Versailles. And do you know why these wars were fought? Because France helped American colonies, 13 colonies, to get freedom from Britain. This war added debt more than $1 billion livres. Beta, this livres, that it was the currency of France. Then lenders charged 10% interest and it created financial burden on the government. That is why the treasure was empty. Now, because the treasure were empty, what the king did? He just put on the more taxes on the third estate. So this will be the next cause of this revolution. See how this is about the French society, how it was divided. I have made this flow chart over here. Three estates. First estate was clergy. In clergy, who were people? Persons with special function in church. Means church people were included in clergy and they were privileged by birth. Then second estate. In second estate, nobility. In nobility, who were there? High ranked social class. And those were also privileged according to their designation. And you know, these two, these both estate, these were exempted from tax. And now this third estate, in this big businessmen, merchants, court officials and lawyers were included. And after that, peasants and artisans. And at the bottom, small peasants, landless labor and servants. And do you know these third estate, these form 90% of the population and they don't have any privilege. They were not privileged at all. And all the financial burden was on third estate. So we will read that how the inequality was there in society. We will read more about this. Nobles enjoyed feudal privileges. Feudal dues from peasants means they withdraw feudal dues from peasants. Peasants to render services to the lord, to work in their house and field, serve in army, and even sometimes they had to work in building of roads and buildings also. Then other than that, church too extracted tithes. Tithes was 1/10 of the agriculture produce. It means whatever peasants were producing, 1/10 of the produce they are to give to the church. Then tele. It was also a kind of tax that was directly to be paid to the state. And so by this we came to know that burden of financing activities of the state through taxes was borne by the third estate alone. And they don't have any privilege and they were facing so much scarcity of basic means also. So this was also the main reason of the French Revolution. Now as I told you, because now they put on more taxes, right? Now see this topic, subsistence crisis. What do you mean by subsistence crisis? When there is the lack of basic means of livelihood. When the basic means are endangered, it is called subsistence crisis. Now in old regime, population increases. And do you know what do you mean by old regime? Till time of 1789 in France, it is known as the old regime. Now population increases, then increase in demand for food with the population, but production could not keep pace with the increasing population. So price of bread rose because the rule apply of demand and supply. Demand was more and supply was less. And in the same way, wages were also not increased. So this creates the subsistence crisis where the basic means of livelihood are endangered. So these we are just knowing about the chain of events, right? Now see, when all these things were happening, then some important thinkers, they also involved in the revolution. They gave their own views through their books. The first thinker was Rousseau, and his famous book was Social Contract. And in this book, he proposed a form of government based on social contract between people and their representative. Like these days we see the democratic government. The democracy is also a social contract between the people and their representative. This was given by Rousseau. Then the next thinker is Montesquieu. His book was The Spirit of Law. In this, division of power within the government was given, and it was executive, legislature and judiciary. I think you must have read in class 8 also, these are the three organs of the government. And the third thinker was John Locke. His famous book was True Treatise of Government, and he refuted the doctrine of the divine and absolute right. Now what do we mean by the doctrine of the divine and absolute right? It means autocratic rights should be limited by the constitution. And do you know, by all these thinkers, by their given ideas, there was the emergence of middle class. Earlier, either there was first and second estate top class or there was bottom class. But now there was emergence of middle class. And this middle class, their view was to end the privilege based society. So this was about the chain of events of the France. All these create the causes of the French Revolution. But in next lecture we will read more about this. There are some other reasons also. Till then, have a nice day.